It seems often, although I've kind of changed a little bit, it seems often, Wanda, when I don't feel well, and I mean like really down in the dumps, that my mindset goes to what's wrong with me? Why am I sick? What's happening? What is this about? Am I going to die? Um, and sometimes I know that's because of anxiety. I don't know where it stems from exactly. I would anticipate it probably comes from a variety of past lives, to include this life, that I and ancestral kinds of things that I brought in. But when I can get myself grounded and recognize that I am well and really feel that, really get in that space, I do see there's a blessing. I do. I can hear my guides talking to me, and I will then be at the place where I'm like, okay, I'm actually going through this so that I can be on the other side of it, strengthening my own spiritual self.
Absolutely. The fun part is maybe figuring out why. If there is a why, sometimes you get sick because you just won't slow down and rest. And so your body says, oh, you will. And so you lie down for a while. And that's a good thing too. That's your body doing what it needs to do to remind you to take care of yourself. That's not a bad thing at all. That's a blessing. There's also the fact that sometimes we are brooding too long on something, or we're not able to let something go. And sickness is a way of letting it out of us as we then take care of ourselves to get better. That's a good thing too. It tells us that something's wrong and what do we need to do to fix this. That's a real blessing. So illness in and of itself can be a very good thing. And sometimes when it's time for you to leave this life and your time on earth is over, the illness is such that you're not going to get over it. But leaving the earth when you no longer have a use for the earth, and when you're all the things that you came to the earth to do are done, isn't really a bad thing either. That's all in how you look at things. Anybody else have an example of something that they at first or maybe could never see the blessing in? Well, I can give you another example. When my husband died, I was pretty sure that wasn't a blessing. But I did move here to be with my children. And after I did, that's been one of the best things I ever did in my life. So I never would have done it otherwise. And Joe's body couldn't support him anymore. So that's a blessing. I've got to spend more time with my children than I have since they were little kids. And I'm perfectly happy with that result. It's been wonderful. You have one, Eva?
Yeah, so mine is really, really fresh. A loved one is having surgery today. And this is something that I just found out about. And in speaking together last night, it was clear to me, and I doubt that it's, just because of being in the hospital and the surgery, but it's been sort of a growing thing that, and I'm not happy about this, and I'm not seeing this as a blessing overall, but if we're going to look at like silver linings, I'm sensing that there is a greater capacity for some effective use of surrender and acceptance and flexibility that has really been needed in order for more good to come in and in order to actually address things that need to be addressed. So I guess I see that as the silver lining, but I'm, like you said, would prefer that this wasn't happening.
Absolutely not. No one wishes ill on anyone else. We only want the best for the people we love, but sometimes their best isn't for us to know. Just like we were talking with any illness, there's always an opportunity to reflect, figure things out, and make things better, unless it's your time to leave the earth. And part of that is attitude. Part of it is just looking at it from a higher self perspective rather than looking from it from your emotional perspective. You're a full being, so you're going to be emotional, but you also are a multi-varied soul with so many concepts that, sorry.
Aw, look who came to visit.
It's Gibson.
The furry
He came
people.
to visit us. So I keep trying to adjust this a little bit. I'm not used to using this, and I don't seem to be able to get myself centered. Oh, well. I'll just be off to the side a little bit.
We can still see you though. It's fine.
Okay. I'm used to being on the computer upstairs, so that's where the other class is going on, and somebody else is using my Zoom up there. So it's all in how you look at things, because truly everything that happens to you is a blessing in some way. Mm-hmm. You can have times in life where you struggle to pay your bills. How many of you have had that one? Almost everybody. I can't use my hands. We've almost all had that happen. And it's troubling when it happens, but it does teach you how to either be more prepared or to find a job that pays you more money, or to gain the skills you need to find a job that pays you more money, or to plan better. All of those things can happen when you have those experiences. You stay down.
Wanda, I have a question about this. So, I mean, I think that probably everybody here can grasp the concept of a silver lining, and that there can be growth and challenge and gratitude that comes and all kinds of things. But when we're actually in the midst of it, being able to glean the more specific benefits. Can you speak to that a little bit? Because I think there is a comfort, like if it's just sort of a vague, oh, well, there will be some silver linings, there will be some blessings that come out of this. But what we're really dealing with in the day-to-day is the challenge part. Having a fuller understanding of what the potential benefits are, more specifically, I think can be helpful to that part of us, the personality part, the human part that is dealing with the loss or the sorrow or the concern or whatever it is.
I think if you accept as your operating mode or your belief system that there's always a blessing in everything, you will see them very quickly. Of course, there's going to be a shock and a feeling of trauma, and then you begin to recover and you can figure out what it was and continue to recover even more quickly. have trouble with your family. Well, you can decide which family members you want to continue to spend time with and ones you don't. Do you really need to be part of your family all the time when they're very toxic to you? You don't have to do that. You can move on. You can do your duty by them. For instance, if your mother has always treated you like crap and mistreated you your whole life, you can just walk away from that. But to me, if my mother got sick, I'd still go there and just put aside everything she said, realizing there's something wrong with her, that she's not well. If she was well, she wouldn't treat anybody that way. And that she's sick and helpless at the time, and I can help anybody who's in that situation, especially the woman who brought me into the earth. So you also have to realize that most people who behave badly are people who don't understand why they're behaving badly. If they did, they wouldn't behave that way. There's something wrong with their ego structure. There's something wrong with how they see themselves. And most of them see themselves as a victim of the world, when none of us is a victim of the world. Bad things can happen. Every day something happens. Most days nothing bad happens. Out of your life, there are probably 30 days when something really bad happened. Out of how many days have you lived? So the rest of the time, it's just, you get up, you drink your coffee or your tea, and you get ready for work. You go to work, you come home, you relax for a while. Or first you may eat and then wash the dishes, and then you relax for a while. And then you go to bed, you talk to the phone on the phone with a few people before you do that. And that's what happens to you. You pay some bills. You may be worried about something or whatever, but nothing really bad happens most days. Also, you have to look at, on a daily basis, how you look at things. If most days of your life, nothing really bad happens, and you're letting 30 days of your life dictate how you feel all the time, then that's not a very good use of time. It's not a very good use of your emotional energy. Mm-hmm. And so you need to reflect on how many days nothing bad happened to you.
It reminds me of Abraham Hicks talking about how, like, the news projects this idea of how horrible the world is. But if we actually had an accurate picture, it would be so much like wonderful and good and just like blip.
Yes.
Not to take away from the things that are happening at all or to dismiss them, but it does give us a very skewed perspective.
And most of the world isn't being bombed today. A small portion of it is.
Yeah, it doesn't take away the heartache for the
part. You still feel compassion. That's what people do who are good people. You feel compassion, but you don't have to hurt for it. You don't have to suffer for your compassion. Your job's to live the best life you can and learn how to be happy doing that. That's every one of our jobs. And in order to do that, we have to learn some changes, or we'll live our whole life feeling miserable over things we have no control over, couldn't change if we wanted to. And are uncomfortable with. Your job's to be comfortable with you and know that you're doing the best job of living that you possibly can each and every day. That you've put your best into that day, and then you're going to get up tomorrow and you're going to put your best into the next day. And that's where blessings flow from. The realization that you're living the best you can, that yesterday you didn't know what you knew today. So yesterday you couldn't make the same decision that you might make about something today because you were in a different place and you hadn't educated yourself yet on that, or you've not had experience with that situation yet. So you couldn't make the same decision that, 24 hours later you might be able to make. And that's okay. You weren't meant to. Or you would have been living today when it happened, not yesterday. So you don't have to hold any decision you've ever made against yourself. You were doing the best you could at the time with what you knew, with what you were feeling, with the experience of life as you knew it. And today you'll make the best decision you can, and tomorrow you'll have even more education and experience under your belt, and you'll make a different decision tomorrow. But you have to work with what you have now. That's all you've got at any given time, is what you have to work with right now. And that's still you living your best life and gaining experience and becoming more informed. And then being able to put a different perspective on everything that happens to you, to come to terms with it and let it be fodder for your growth. That's another true blessing, that you can do that. Blessings flow when we're ready to see them, when we are self-forgiving, when we're other people forgiving, because truly there's not, if you're doing the best you can every day based on who you are and what you know, what's everybody else doing? They may or may not choose to wise up from that. But they're still doing the best they can with their understanding and where they've come as a soul, and the progression that their soul has made, and the progression that their personality has made in this lifetime. That's not to say sometimes people don't choose to do very bad things, but you don't know what's inside of them. And it's not your job to judge what's inside of them. It's to accept that most people are doing the best they can. And our job is to get up every day and do the best we can, not do the best somebody else can do, and not to judge the best that somebody else can do. Hi, Neil. That makes life a lot simpler and a lot easier to deal with. When you understand just a few basic principles, you open yourself up in such a way is that you pretty much don't have to permanently feel bad about anything. You can recover because you have resiliency then. You can't build resiliency if you continue to look things the same way. Resiliency in the brain, some people have a lot of difficulty with that, especially people that say were shamed in childhood a lot. They probably have the most difficulty in doing that, but it's also been scientifically shown that by changing the way you think about it, that you can develop resiliency. And resiliency, if you don't have any, you're going to be dragging on the floor a lot, because you have to learn how to pick yourself up, make a change in the way things look to you, and find all those things that have been good. Most of your life is geared toward getting you to that point where you gain the most experience, the most knowledge to take to the next place you're going. And our job is to assimilate that education. Okay, I lived through that. What does that mean? How does that help me? Well, it made me wiser. I'll never do that again. Or next time that happens, I'll try this instead, without thinking of yourself as having been a victim. Well, you may have gone to school, but you weren't a victim. All of us could call ourselves a victim. There's no one sitting out there who can call themselves a victim. But if you do, you've lost the battle of resiliency. Again, you've let those 30 bad days make you miserable. And you have to find a way, if you're going to be healthy, if you're going to thrive in life, if you're going to have financial stability, if you're going to have all the blessings coming into your hands and just flowing through you, because deciding that something was horrible and there's no redeeming quality to it stymies your ability to receive. You put up a shield to anything else happening for you. And it doesn't work, because things are still going to happen to you, but you won't really notice the good ones. You'll notice more of the bad ones, because that's the way you've trained your mind to think of yourself as a victim. So you have to think, if you want to be healthy, now, how do I use this to become a better person? So this happened, and it didn't seem fair, but it's still part of my education. And what do I do about that? What do I do with this piece of information now? How to make myself better now that I've experienced it? And I don't think it's hard to do that. It's an attitude. It's setting your attitude every day to learn from everything that happens to you, to make you more. The more educated you are, the more experienced you are, the more wisdom you will have to provide. And then you can take that wisdom out and put it out into the world. And when you do, the world is a better place for you, having had that experience. And that's the ultimate goal. We use our experiences to inform, share, talk about it with other people. And they can assimilate that knowledge, and it might prevent them from having to go through the same thing, because they learn what they need to know, some other way than having to have the experience. And their insight about it helps them to go on and have an even better life. And how big of a blessing is that? You might do it by being kind to something else, even though they know that you've had a tough time. Maybe you had a tough year, but you're still kind and you're still loving, and you're still gentle and good to people, you're still able to give and to receive. And that's something you can offer out to everyone. And then you are being the best human being you can be. And it's teaching. Every one of us is a teacher to each other. We're all students of each other too, but we're all teachers of each other. And when you can behave in that manner, you're constantly teaching others, just as when you watch hard things happening and see how people handle it, or are able to take a step back and say, well, this isn't the end result. The end result hasn't happened yet. The end result is the resolution of it. Another thing that you will learn around the way is there is a resolution to everything. There is. I can, again, use myself as an example. My husband died. I moved on. I've got the best house I ever lived in because things are cheaper here in Indiana than they are in Virginia by far. So, good deal. You can also, or I can also be very grateful that I've met people here who are very kind and love me and I love them. Great deal. And I still have all of you, wherever you are. Some of you are scattered all over the place. And we still love each other. And that's a great deal. That's a blessing. I can talk to my neighbors. We spent, 40 minutes talking to my neighbor yesterday when I was sitting outside with the dog. And it was wonderful. And I enjoyed every minute of it. And I have been blessed. I get to see Sean and Alex every week, usually on Saturdays. I haven't been able to do that in such a very long time. And that is a true blessing to me. I also have had experience here that wasn't so good. But what the hey, I'm counting all the good ones. I had someone who moved into my garage apartment and then sued me because she said I was stealing from her. That wasn't so fun, but I won. I won the case. She was putting things in a public place that she had been told not to be putting things in. I didn't owe her anything. She had no proof that she ever put them there. And I didn't know anything about what she was talking about. So she didn't win. And the judge threw the case out. And was it a little hard while I went through it? Now I just laugh about it. What it did do was get her out of my garage apartment. The judge told her she had to go. So that was a relief. It's now a playroom for my sons to put their models together. There probably won't ever be anybody else up there. That was a good thing too. And I also fixed it up and made it really beautiful up there. So everything can be a blessing, even when it doesn't seem that way at the time. And I in thinking through other times when things like that have happened, I got moved to the DC area from Atlanta. It was either lose my job or take a transfer. Well, I had 2 kids in school. I couldn't very well just leave my job at the time. And I got moved. I couldn't sell my house in Atlanta because we were in the middle of a high housing crisis, and the value of my house had plummeted. And this will just kill you. I paid $70,000 for that house in Atlanta. Of course, this was in the 1990s. And I could only buy a house in the DC area for $200,000. So, and I couldn't sell my house for $70,000. I could only sell it for less than that. And that wouldn't cover paying off the mortgage. So that was very hard. And it went on for a while. And I thought I was going to be bankrupt because I couldn't continue paying both. But I was offered a federal program that, because of the housing process, allowed me to, they would take my house and write off the debt and not have it affect my credit. It just appeared while I was trying to decide what to do. And I walked away from that with good credit, and I was able to buy a house in the DC area. Cute house. I loved it. I enjoyed living there 25 years. And when you're open to everything being a blessing, I didn't know how it was going to resolve, but I did believe then that everything that happens to you is eventually for a good reason. So instead of having to market my house, I was able to just walk away. And credit intact. In fact, I ended up with better credit than, bye, Jackie, better credit than I had ever had. So by anticipating that there will be a good solution, that the end result is not what the result is right now. You haven't gotten to the end result yet. And that end result can be close communication with people. It can be learning about things that provide for you. It can be learning about things that provide for your kids or your neighbors. It can be coming closer to your family after a tragedy. I find that when someone dies in a family, I had some of this with my sister, that it was very hard to take the way she was acting after my mother's death. Our father had died just like a little bit before that, and then my brother died, and then my mother died, all within the space of a year. And we were the only thing keeping my mother alive. We were sleeping in her hospital room with her, and we had been there for I guess the better part of 2 weeks. And I knew if we left, my mother was going to die. So they wanted to know if they should put a feeding tube into my mother, and we were trying to make that decision, and Susan kept demanding to go home. Like, she wanted me to drive her home. I suggested she get on an airplane and go home so that I could stay there with my mother, with our mother. And she said, I can't do that. I can't make a trip on an airplane. So against my better judgment, I said, all right, I will take you home and come right back. Well, that was a 14-hour trip. So I got across South Carolina or across Georgia into South Carolina from Alabama, and my mother died. We were only got a few hours. I knew that was going to happen. What I did come to understand, though, is how unwell my sister had been feeling, and that she was not able to get on an airplane because she didn't have the money to do that. I would have paid for it to be able to stay there so that my mother could live just a little bit longer. Not that she knew anything. She didn't know much, but she must have known something because she died as soon as we left. So she knew we were there. And some part of her. She didn't have a lot of cognitive ability at that point, but she knew we were there. So when I resolved it inside of myself that my sister was doing what she had to do for her own well-being, that made it easier. And I got really close to my sister, even more so after that. And we had already been really close. There are almost always crises to attend to when someone is dying like that, or after they die, and there's something to resolve for them. It's normal and it's hard, but if you look for the right spots and work it out, then you could come together and feel closer than ever with the ones you love. There is also coming to the understanding that other people don't work like you do. Nobody in the world works exactly like you do. And whatever their capacity is their capacity. Your capacity is different. So you can't look at yourself and compare that somebody else's capacity to deal with things is going to be what yours is. It isn't. They're different people. They have different nervous systems. They have different levels of that resiliency that we're talking about, either because of unresolved trauma or because they have not yet broadened their vision of life. So they can't do what you can do. Can't possibly. They won't make the same decisions that you can make. And they're not always going to understand how you're able to do something. So the best you can do is to see that, understand, have compassion for where they are, and have compassion for yourself for where you are, and try to do your best. What would the universe do in that situation? And what would a truly kind, good, considerate, compassionate person do in that situation? Then you get to choose. You can choose the path of understanding. You can choose the path of love without judgment, without complaint, and without withholding your love in any way. Rather, giving it freely and letting it flow out into the world to smooth the pathways. Smoothing those pathways so that as you walk down them, things get easier. Providing that light source, being a light being, knowing you're a light being, and walking down the path where you can find all the answers because you've eliminated them. Not turning a blind eye to what exists as an option for you. But finding it, it will be obvious as long as you keep the lights on. Will you make what you thought was the right choice every time later? No. It goes back to, yesterday you could only make the choice you could then. But it does leave you with a full understanding of yourself. You'll know why you made a choice. You'll know how you got to be here. And you'll know there's always a path forward that has a lot of light in it, and that you will be always the best person you can be that day. And that's all you're ever called on to be. And that is your job. That's what we all signed up for, is learn how to live. We didn't come here to learn how to die. We already know how to do that. Although living up until you die is something some people have to learn. But we all came here to be a blessing by learning how to live. And that's the true blessing in each and every one of us. You're a blessing to the universe. Every moment that you live, and do the best you can. Everyone else out there is a blessing to the universe, as long as they're doing the best they can, even if their best looks pretty bad to you. They have something wrong or undeveloped, if that's the choice they're making. And this is a lifetime where they will either cease to make those kind of choices after they depart, or they volunteered to come here and be big trouble so they could shake things up a little bit. And it takes a brave soul to do that, whose contract might be to start a war or incite a riot that causes people to get killed, or any number of other things that we may have had highlighted in recent news events.
Are you, Wanda, are you actually saying that like everybody who does really bad things is some brave, great soul?
No, I'm saying that some of them are.
Mm-hmm.
They sign contracts just like you did as to what they're gonna do on the earth. And there are some of them that have some pretty heinous acts on their hands. And they're in, some of them are just sick and in need of recovery. There are others who came here to do something that would change the course of history, or make people look at things in a different way, or bring people together, bring nations together, cause alliances to shift, cause a change and an expansion of the compassion of mankind. That's not a bad result. If millions and millions of people become more compassionate, or exercise their compassion, and that goes out into the universe, that's a pretty good result. Will there be people who die? Yes. Does God look at death the same way you do? Absolutely not. They just went sit beside him. He's glad for their company. They're rejoicing on the other side and having a party. Does it mean it doesn't hurt? No. How do you learn compassion? Because you feel the hurt. You cannot be a compassionate person if you've never felt hurt. I do think there are very sick people who rise to places of power that, or walk into a mall and kill a bunch of people, that had they been identified as people who are mentally ill, probably would have had and gotten the help they needed. They may not have done the things they did. I think that's true as well. At the same time, I don't know that those people are evil. I think they're sick. There are a few that have really bad intent. Most of them are so hurt inside that they strike out at other people. And there's something really wrong with them because they haven't learned how to handle their emotions, or to seek help when they need it, or to understand that it's not going to make anything better. Does that cause harm? Again, it's all in how people choose to look at things. If we react by finding solutions, identifying people early that are tending that way, and getting them the help they need, then it's a great thing. If we rather can't see that there's a predominant illness out there and do nothing about it, then we're not doing our job. That person is contributing to the learning of mankind, and we're the ones who get to make decisions about it. How do we want to approach these types of situations? How early can we identify these types of mental illnesses and intervene? Can that lead to some laws about what you can and can't do when someone is that ill? Well, you could maybe have psychoanalysis of most individuals while they're still in middle school, just like any other evaluation that is done. There are all kinds of possibilities. We're not there yet, but we're being pushed into a place where we will have to find those types of solutions. So a trend is going, people attacking innocent people. We as a society, as a world, then have to react to that by finding solutions by people who have this illness. That's our job. Our job's to help ease pain. Somebody's job is to inflict it to make us act. To come up with solutions for things that make people that ill. Does everybody understand what I'm saying?
Can I ask a question, Wanda?
course.
So I really resonate with what you're saying, and I believe that that's truth. I know a lot of us get stressed out, and we feel, as I would say, everyone here is probably an empath. Um, I haven't quite mastered, even though I know there's a resolution and I know there's a different perspective I can take. I haven't quite mastered how not to allow that to enter the body. Can you speak to that?
Sure. As for staying, centering, grounding, and balancing yourself several times a day, and getting up, doing it, keeping yourself centered so that anything that comes your way, your vibration stays so high that it just becomes a high vibration. If a lower vibrational energy comes your way, it has to either become that higher vibration or it can't get in. It's a practice. You have to do it over and over again throughout the day if you are feeling stress. It's also truly accepting the belief that things will end as they should, that things are allowed to happen because somewhere along the line, it's in everybody's best interest for us to understand. World events happen for all of us to understand and gain perspective on. And we really need to learn the one about a war for every generation. We really need to get that perspective and begin to change that. Because so far, all the generations I have known have had a war. And do we really need to keep having that experience? Well, actually, we don't seem to be getting the picture on a worldwide basis of how to resolve that. But eventually we will. Eventually we become true peaceful beings who cooperate with each other. If we don't, we will, the result of that is very bad. But I know that we do. And every once in a while we get that wake up call. You're getting too angry at each other. You're getting too polarized. Here's a wake up call to make you realize what that ends up with. It ends up in war. So we have to come back to ourselves and say, oh, let's do something else. And we unite better.
Wanda, it sounds like on the one hand, we're talking about accepting everything as a blessing and looking for that. And I definitely see the value in that perspective and that approach to life. And at the same time, that there are choices, that many roads can lead to Rome, and some of them are, easier, gentler, more loving, more beneficial. And that both of those truths exist simultaneously, but they're also seemingly juxtaposed to some extent, and I'm just wondering if you can sort of speak to that everything.
Yeah, I think they both are true.
Yeah, but if there are better ways, how to cultivate that within ourselves and within humanity, so that the lessons don't have to be so harsh and so many people don't have to suffer so tremendously.
What has happened with the current war from the rest or most of the rest of the world?
There's a tremendous outpouring of compassion and a sense of justice.
Love.
And love. Yeah. I hear you. I hear where you're coming from.
What does love do? It heals. It's what we choose to do that can create that kind of healing for everyone. If we stay mad at our families forever, then are we creating love? If we accept that they are who they are and they're probably not going to change, and we can either not be in their presence or love them a different way, accepting that they're flawed, or maybe for them not flawed, but just people we're not comfortable with. There's truth in that too. So I think it's up, all of our responses are up to us. The world needed a huge outpouring of love. And I will never blame the Russian people. I don't think they even know. So I love them too. I include them in that love. But not only that, I include all those people in the Middle East that are constantly at each other's throats because they don't understand and can't accept that we should love our neighbors. I have compassion for all of them. I have compassion for the people suffering in Africa.
What about
And
the people in the Ukraine right now who are going through that? How is this benefiting them?
well, it definitely shake their lives up. And I think it's kind of like having an illness that makes you wake up and learn what's important in life. They get to choose whether they do that or not. They can appreciate life even more. They can dedicate themselves to the cause of rebuilding their country. They can teach their children well or not.
What is your perspective on the concept of taking out a single person for the benefit of the many?
I wouldn't kill anybody. However, I'm not a country.
Mm-hmm.
I would be more inclined to capture someone who was harming all of humanity and hold them in a place where they can do no more harm.
Well, that's
Yeah.
another way to take them out. I mean, basically to stop, to stop.
Because what you're talking about is a very ill individual.
Yeah.
Who he may not ever change that, but he is a mentally ill individual. And rather than killing him, I would keep him from harming anyone.
I kind of don't understand why that hasn't happened already. I mean, I know this isn't the first time in world history that.
Because when you take out the leader of another country, you're basically declaring war on them.
Yeah, I do understand that. And I've thought about that. But I mean, yeah, okay.
You want to go to war with Russia?
No. No, I don't. But I do think that there are times when the greater good, necessitates preventing somebody who's causing a lot of trouble from being able to continue to do that.
Oh, I understand completely. I think it is a delicate balance, and that no country wants to declare war on another country that has nuclear capability.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's a very difficult for any of the other world leaders. That would be a very difficult decision to make, and probably taken only as a last resort.
But the generals have to know. I mean, there are people in the inner circle who have to know.
Oh, I'm sure a lot of them know. I'm also sure they're weighing everything in a balance. You want mutes on our shores? Okay. I think we have to weigh all the outcomes. A wounded animal will lash out.
Mhm.
And if it were not successful, if you planned it and it were not successful, what do you think would happen? So I'm sure there are people considering all of those things and trying to figure out the best thing to do. But it's not an easy decision. And I would not want to be in that position for anything.
No, I don't think anybody does. I don't think anybody wants to be in the position that we are in either, though.
Of course not. But we've been in this position before. It's probably not the last time we'll ever be in this position. And we have to learn each time what's the best thing to do. And hindsight is 2020. Foresight is not always 2020.
It just seems that in terms of human history, there's just far too much tolerance in the wrong way for people like this to be able to run amok.
Well, I'm not responsible for that, and I don't know what I would do. I would treat them with consideration and compassion for their illness and try to find ways to neutralize their illness. That would be me.
Mhm.
Good thing I'm not a soldier.
Yeah. It's not really about cruelty. It's just about making it stop for me.
I know that, but it's not my place to decide that. And it's not your place to decide that.
On one level, that's true, but on another level, I think that there is a global responsibility for what we allow to happen. You know, like what if CPS never existed, Child Protective Services? If, you know, people never stood up to Hitler, that the tolerance is part of what allows this to continue. And I don't mean tolerance in a good way.
I don't think people are being tolerant. I think they're weighing the best course of action that causes the least damage.
Okay, well,
If you
sorry for
cause
my feistiness, but
no, if you cause 10 million other people to get killed because you've taken action, you haven't made things better.
right, I hear that. I hear that. I mean, that it needs to be handled thoughtfully and carefully. I just also do feel, though, that there's a level at which, as a global community, there's just far too much tolerance for a lot of bad things that happen.
Well, I'm pretty sure that that's being discussed at those levels. I'm fairly certain of that. So I wouldn't think that it isn't. I mean, I think it would be impossible that it's not being discussed at those levels. I know it. And I think that people are weighing and judging and giving advice to the best of their ability right now. It's just not an easy solution. And again, I feel like people are trying to consider if it will cause more harm than good.
That may be true now, but like if you look at something like Rwanda, you know, as far as I know,
Well,
that
I think we pay enough attention to places like that.
that's part of what I mean by the too much tolerance.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think sometimes we only put our interest in what's more familiar to us or in what's maybe we have a deeper interest in. that doesn't mean that it should go unaddressed on a more global scale. But also you can't take on but just so many things. So with this, there's just, yeah, that's what I'm saying. Our job's sitting in love and light and being compassionate. I mean, that's our job as light workers. You can send love and light to Putin. Can't hear you, Yvonne.
Sorry, Judy is asking, so is it our job to send light and love? Is that the best course of action? Does it make a difference? Or does it only change when billions of people send light?
Everyone who sends light makes a difference. Everyone who sends light makes a difference because it affects those around you. It reaches the consciousness. I feel it every time someone sends love and light. I feel it through my soul. I feel the goodwill. There's a lot of it out there. So the more we keep that up, the better off the world is. You know, people could be responding by turning those refugees away. They're not doing that. Some of them are taking them into their homes. Love and light helps all the time. In the end, what happens with this is kind of in God's hands. Remember that God does not see death like you do.
What about cruelty?
I don't think God wants anyone to be cruel. But does he punish you every time you step on an ant? Does God punish you for having the thought that you want to have somebody taken out? Does God punish us because we get anxious in traffic and say some choice words about the guy in the other car? Does God punish us because we get mad at our spouse and say something, bring up something that happened 20 years ago? You did this to me, kind of way.
Well, sometimes I think we pay for our own responses, you know, without even
always do.
God into it. But just this like idea of tolerance, you know, I work with
I think we're going to finish this as part of the discussion.
And Deborah wants to say something.
Yes, Deborah.
So one of the learnings that I had that was very beneficial for me to realize that sometimes there is such a higher long game plan for humanity or society that we can't even grasp that. I was on a Tibetan Buddhist path for 7 years. One of my teachers, I studied his teachings, and his son ended up heading up the lineage he had passed before I came into the practice. But I understood the reason, because China invaded Tibet in a very, really just massacring the innocent, killing monks, destroying monasteries, all unprovoked. It was, talk about a situation of invasion with absolutely no reason, all the innocent. But the end result that took place for the benefit of all humanity was that 300 of the highest teachers made their way down through the Himalayas to India, and many died. But the end result is we have the Dalai Lama, who was about to be held by the Chinese and never would have gotten out. We had my teacher, and all of Buddhism was able to come out of the East and be brought to Western society. If China had not done that act of invading Tibet, we would have none of that in the Western world. And so to me, that's a great example of understanding that I totally do not know the bigger picture of so
That's
many
right.
things that are transpiring for humanity. And I'm not that I feel good about what happened to the Tibetan people and that country, but so much gratitude for that silver lining of, oh my goodness, look at the benefit for the peace and the meditation and the compassion and all the teachings and everything that has taken place because they did that horrific act. And so there's always a higher reason that
Absolutely.
such
For
a
everything that
yeah.
happened.
Yes, and sometimes we can't grasp in the now moment what that is, but we could look at this Ukraine situation 10 years from now, 20 years from now, 50 years from now, and say, wow, look what that did for all of humanity.
Absolutely.
So, yeah.
I think that is true of everything. Every human event in some way contributes to the benefit of the whole, meaning the whole of humanity. Does it do it in the moment? No, there may be some people who pass away. Again, God doesn't consider that. He's not doing it to cause suffering. He's allowing the plan for this universe to unfold in accordance with the laws of the universe. And one of those laws is that in the end, things work out. That's what I feel. How does it work out? Well, we had a civil war in this country, worked out pretty good, I think. Had a Revolutionary War, that worked out great for this country. I don't know how England feels about that.
Yeah.
They're probably okay with that too.
And those are examples of where there wasn't tolerance. And, Deborah, I think what you said is so profound and true. And yet at the same time, I find myself wondering, well, couldn't they have just gone down?
You need to let go of the anger.
Yeah, I've seen too many people hurt.
Yeah, you need to let go of the anger. You have to take a step back and see it from the broader and higher self perspective.
I'm also saying, though, that there's more than one road that leads to Rome. And it doesn't always have to be through these terrible occurrences, that there are other options. They could have just gone down the mountain.
Maybe, maybe not. I know that I can get very set in my ways and have to have something happen to break me out of that mold so that I'll do something else. I think countries are like that. I think leadership is like that. Sometimes we don't act unless there's something that shakes us up. We just keep doing the same thing. And we often don't come to realizations. One of the teachings about the rays, having a soul ray and having a personality ray that influence you, is that it's there to set up conflict.
Mm-hmm.
So that you will then have the conflict you need to develop. Because conflict can be healthy for you in that it causes you to make choices and one choice is to go with your personality, and one choice is to go with what's good for your soul.
I think there's also sort of the tension of integration of the best of both.
Absolutely, they do have to merge in the end until you become your higher self.
Yeah.
And it's fully integrated. And most people aren't there yet, so they continue to get the conflict they need to push them that way until they start making the decisions that are best interest of their spirit.
Mm-hmm.
It's what we all have to do. And I think that's what happens to countries. And I think that's what happens to peoples. I think it happens to the whole human race. And that at any given time, there are people living out the best and worst of what their soul ray and personality ray means. And that too is part of the tension that causes us to grow. The whole reason for being here is to grow and evolve. We've evolved a long way. And we are continuing to evolve. And some of us will vibrate off the planet. And some of us will vibrate off the planet in 100,000 years. And that's all the way it's supposed to be. That all souls will find their way into moving on to that ascended state. And they all do it as they're able to learn and as they're able to incorporate that learning and knowledge. If we become so emotional about what's happening in the world that we cannot integrate the lessons of living, then we set ourselves up for a lot of heartache. If we integrate the lessons of living and live the best life we can and be at peace within ourselves, then we contribute to the peace on earth. It spreads. If we get angry, then we're contributing to the anger that's out there. And that doesn't heal anything.
I remember a Tibetan teacher talking about the benefit of having difficult people around them to show the sides that because like most people would consider me sort of like a flower child, wouldn't hurt a bug. And yet this situation, I'm like, okay, millions of people versus one. What, not about suffering or torture or anything, but I just feel that there's too much tolerance in the world in the wrong way. And it's time for humanity to really step up.
Yeah.
Sorry. Okay, I'm done.
We got the message. Does anyone else have anything they want to say?
I want to say thank you. It was nice to flow in this vibration today.
Yes, there is something we can all do. And that's to create love and peace and infinite understanding within ourselves so that we can see far afield and know that all things lead to good things, because they do. It doesn't mean that some people won't die, but that's not necessarily a bad thing in God's eyes. Will there be pain and suffering? There is in every life. And our job when it comes to pain and suffering is to decide what to do with it. You can make it horrible for the rest of your life. You can, or you can choose to grow and become and be even kinder and more compassionate and more loving and a way shower for anyone else who comes after. That's the choice we all can make. If we can contribute to the greater good in that way. sometimes that's all the control we have. And right now, billions of people are showing love and light. Billions. Even some that haven't shown any in a very long time. That's a pretty powerful turnaround from where the world was going toward hatred and divisiveness. So we'll see how long that lasts. In the end, well, we're not at the final outcome of this, but I do sense that there is going to be a resolution to the war and that we'll all get through it and that we will all come out of it having learned new things. And does it mean that some people will suffer? Yes, the world is full of suffering people. Again, it's their job to make the most out of what they have and to have an attitude that they can get through it because they can. It's time to develop resiliency, the ability to come back from any situation, regain your footing, and continue to be that best person that you can be. Just taking the knowledge you've gained, putting it under your belt and going, yeah. So that happened and I learned something and it's all good. I'm smarter now. I'm more educated. I have a vast experience. And also remember that your experience is not limited to the here and now. As a light being, you have access to all the knowledge in the universe. If you look out there, you might be able to see what's going to happen and how this benefits everything. If you expand your vision, you will see how the whole human race is moving forward. And that we're not allowed to stay in continuous hatred too long. And that any place where the energy is not good will become a trouble point for the good to be poured out on. I used to think that when I went to New Orleans, when I got married, we left on a ship from there. And I said to myself, the energy is so bad in this town that something's going to happen to stir that up because it can't stay like this. This city will be destroyed if the energy doesn't change. And then a few years later, Katrina went through there. People have to wish to choose to have those changes. You can't keep a bad energy in place but so long before something will change it. How are we doing on time, Christine? I'm sorry. How are we doing on time? I don't know what time it is.
Oh, it is 1:35, Wanda. So we're 5 minutes over.
Okay. I figured. I'm going to do the prayer now.
Okay,
It
Christine,
was a very interesting discussion with you all.
Wanda, I do have a question. Christine did have a question
Sure.
earlier. Did you still have your question, Christine? Before we leave?
It wasn't, yeah, no, it wasn't a question. When Wanda was asking if anyone had experiences, you know, kind of as we're talking about just where we, you know, seeing, I guess, like the silver lining and stuff of things. And I was just going to bring up a volunteer an example, but then we got into some of the other stuff. But
Do you still
yeah.
want to do that?
I'll just say it real quickly because I know we're probably all getting really short on time. But yeah, I was just gonna volunteer something that recently happened to me, which was when I was planning and ready to go overseas. I had my suitcase packed and everything and to go and start my program, and but funding never came in. And I just remember in the moment just being totally devastated, wondering what was going on and all of that. And then excuse me, a few days later in the news, you heard about us bombing, ISIS leader, and and then you had the breakout of the war with Ukraine and stuff. And so it was just like, it was definitely not the time for me to be going out, and because these are the places that I would be going to, is like, places that have vulnerable communities, working with people that are refugees, products of conflict and war, and just all of that, trafficking. And it just wasn't going to be the best time. And though I've been waiting on this because of COVID for the past couple of years, it was just, I was just so devastated. But then once that happened, it was just like, oh yeah, even my family was like, yeah, no, you were not going. So,
Yeah.
and it just made me think of, like, again, just seeing that silver lining at that, and the fact of, I definitely don't want to be out there when there's just a lot of chaos and uncertainty.
You don't want to
going
get
on.
shelled.
Exactly. And and then the other silver lining is that I'm here still with my Mama John and the pups, and they've been really great, and it's just been great having that time with them as well. So that was just an example I was just gonna bring up earlier when we were talking about all of that. So thank you.
That's a good one. Nothing is ever as it seems in the moment. The benefits are down the road, and when you sense them, you'll recognize that your life has gone pretty darn well, and it's all a blessing.
Yes.
I think that's true for the human race as well. Mm-hmm. In the end, there's always a blessing with it, although there are bumps along the way where it feels like it might not be, but in the end, there's a true blessing there.
Exactly.
People come together, and if they get too far apart, the universe will find ways to make them come together again. That is a truth. All right. I think we have to end. So put your names in, say them out loud, who you want to receive prayer. Healing. We're going to do a little quick healing. How about everybody unmuting yourself so I can hear what you're saying? Thank you.
Thanks,
My
Wanda.
papa, my grandmother, my May.
Dad, Susan, Lori, Darlene, Steele, Sydney, Molly, Honey, Athena, Aspen, my dad, me, Gareth.
Gaia.
All of us.
For myself,
Healing.
my plans,
Wanda,
my patience,
Teresa, Iris, Courtney.
you're the water.
All right. Divine Infinite Spirit, thank you for being with us, for being one with us. We ask that we are clear, centered, grounded, balanced, aligned, and filled with light, love, peace, and joy. We ask for the help of the ascended beings, the masters, the guides, the angels. And we ask that every soul mentioned, everyone in attendance, all our families, all our loved ones, and through our connections, everyone who lives on this planet receives this healing. Ask you all to send energy out And I just feel that wave moving out across the universe. Basically, it's not limited to the earth. It's touching people with all kinds of issues. That feels good. I love you all.
Love you, Wanda.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank
you.
Thank you.
And
Thank you.
Yvonne, a special healing went to you for helping you to in your medical stuff that you're taking care of. So I just wanted you to know I sent you extra.
Thank you so much.
All right. Love you all.
Love you.
Thank you,
Bye.
Wanda.
Thank you,
Bye,
Wanda.
everyone. Have a great day.
Thank you.
Bye,
Take care.
Michelle. Bye, Donna.
Thank you, Wanda. I'm sorry I was so feisty today.
Well, you were feeling very concerned,
Yes, I am.
and that's all right.
I'm ready for humanity to change. You know, I feel like enough is enough. And because of what I do, you know, I just see so many of those people.
I know you work with wounded warriors.
Mhm. Yeah, but thank
I
you. And
understand.
I'm sorry if I was over the top.
Oh,
And
no,
they're
it's
like,
good to get it off your chest.
yeah, there are like deep philosophical questions about all of this for me. And, you know, as a Libra, I have a very deep sense of justice. And not justice like that it's not about wanting anybody to hurt. It's just like enough. You know, like I feel like the general in me comes out and I'm just like, enough. This is gonna stop.
Yeah. Again, how to do that is a very fine balance
Yes, it is.
without causing more
Completely.
harm.
Absolutely.
I hope they all find it.
Yes, me too. Me too. Thank you so much. I love you. Mwah.
Love you.
It was wonderful to have you teach again.
My pleasure.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.